Ranchi gave us one heck of an opening session. There were 5 wickets, there were 5 reviews. England were going at nearly 5 runs per over. At the end of that morning session, England were at 112 for 5. They found themselves at sixes and sevens. But from there on, Joe Root returned to the Joe Root of old. He finishes the day unbeaten on 106, and that has taken England to 302 for 7 from that score of 112 for 5. That's how things panned out on the opening day of the fourth test. Welcome to ESPN Cricket 4 Match Day with Sanjay Manjrekar here to look back on that opening day's action from Ranchi. Sanjay, thank you as ever for your time. Before we get into the dissection of the moving pieces of the day,
Thank you.
that is quite a strange day to be part of, isn't it? If you just break it down in 2 parts, the first being just the first session and then the rest of it, it almost feels like it belongs to two different games.
And it is something that is typical of Indian pitches. We often talk about, the dark color on the pitch, and there might be a little bit of moisture, and the captain of the toss always say it's a dry pitch. But it's a dry pitch with some moisture that will be there for 45, 50 minutes, about an hour and a half, and then it becomes a typical dry pitch. So it's a thing that we saw at the Wankhede Stadium also a lot when we were playing, where the idea was to bat first because the pitch was going to turn on. But the morning session, if you lost the toss, there was a chance for the fielding side to exploit that moisture in the pitch. And that is exactly what India did. So India had that advantage of those 5 wickets, that session that really held the bowlers, after which we saw the true nature of the pitch.
Yeah, it did start becoming challenging for India after that first session, but the rest of day one belonged to Joe Root. So much said and written about him after returning 77 runs in the first 3 tests, but he really showed us what Joe Root can do. And Sanjay, I'm sure it came as no surprise to you. You have been maintaining through the course of the series that whenever Joe Root decides to buckle down and says he wants to make the big runs, he will get the big runs, and that's exactly what happened.
Yes, and consistency is really the hallmark of any performer. I mean, how do you judge a great performer? Consistency, as in delivering, scores and results every match. And I think with this kind of approach, Joe Root is bound to be consistent, more reliable, more dangerous to the opposition. The lesser players who don't trust their defense as much, don't have the kind of mental strength that Joe Root has. For them, the other approach is a good one. It's a pragmatic way to play cricket and get the most of some other players. And the short sample size that we had with Joe Root playing the way he was until now cannot be compared with the 117 matches that he's played before and become the great player. He went back to the old formula, and that is the greatness of Joe Root, that when he plays in that out of the box kind of game for somebody like a Joe Root, he still averages 50. And today was a case of a typical great batter who decided, I'm going to get 100 today, and got it quite comfortably. It looks very comfortable from the outside. And every time a great batter gets 100, it seems like they get it with plenty left in the tank.
Yeah, he got to this one of 219 balls, making it the slowest 100 of the Bazball era. But not just that, it's also the third slowest of Joe Root's 31 test hundreds, which I guess Sanjay takes us to recalibration, which is another common factor when we assess the great test batters. That recalibration for this Bazball team, it becomes an important theme from day one and for the series going forward.
And I think I like the approach which I've maintained, that it makes a lot of sense for that approach that we call Bazball for the modern day batters who find, attacking, counter-attacking, playing unorthodox shots, the kind of inning that Joe Root did. Only few batters today can play that kind of an inning. So as a universal approach, it makes a lot of sense. I've suggested that West Indies as well, their batters will maybe adopt this approach, but people like Joe Root, have different ways of getting runs. He's shown us 2 ways, but this is the more reliable and more he'll find success more consistently, and that I believe should be more his approach, while the others can still stick with, like we saw Crawley make the most of the torrid time that he had. He ended up getting 32 almost in 32 balls.
In that sense, it perhaps just played perfectly for Joe Root that his partner for the lengthy part of the day was Ben Foakes, who along with Root, is one of those batters who does not bat in the baseball way. He is a more old school batter, someone whose strike rate hovers below 50. And for the two of them to take England through that second session without any damage, could be a big partnership in the context of this game and even the series.
It needed to be bigger. So Ben Foakes' dismissal was a crucial turning point. Exactly like in the last game on a decent batting pitch, India were 33 for 3, and it needed a double century partnership between Jadeja and Rohit Sharma to take India into a pretty comfortable terrain. So that is what will need bounce back superbly through Mohammad Siraj. But Ben Foakes, again, a guy who played the old classical way. And when you look at the two highest partnerships in the series for England against India, Ben Foakes is involved in those two. So, yes, and I think, again, because everyone's talking about whether this is the better approach of baseball, nobody, I think, has put a gun to anyone's head from the team management saying that we've got to play in a certain fashion, and they've got the results to show when the others have played in that fashion. But we keep going back to Joe Root being the exception where you can choose how to play and decide, okay, which is the more reliable formula.
Right, so that was Joe Root and Ben Foakes combining to save England's day from a precarious position they found themselves in at lunch. That was down largely to India's debutant. Akash Deep thrown into the deep end, given a test debut, replacing Jasprit Bumrah. Sanjay, England's batters, you'd forgive them if they thought coming into this game that, okay, fine, we don't have to see Bumrah for one game, but Akash Deep had other ideas.
And the confidence of the Indian team management to leave out Bumrah because they felt they still have enough ammunition to trouble England. A couple of things to talk about. Akash Deep has got 100 first-class wickets, and 50% of those wickets have been bowled and legged before. And today's surface was just ideal, tailor-made. This is where you need a little bit of fortune, the uncontrollables to work in your favor. So he found a pitch where actually he was more suited to exploiting the morning pitch than Mohammad Siraj. So it was perfect for his style of bowling. And again, it's great to see Indian bowlers who seem like they've bowled a million balls. That action looks very repeatable. He's taller than Mukesh Kumar, so he obviously gets a little more bounce. He was touching 140 comfortably, and accuracy. So I mean, he could hit the good leg area at will. So yes, I think from all the seamen that we've seen after the three, Shami, Siraj, and Bumrah, at this stage, I feel Akashdeep is the most exciting one, and he would be the fourth at the moment in that whole food chain of fast bowlers.
Yeah, carries on a proud succession. Mohammad Shami had played most of his Ranji cricket for Bengal. We've seen Mukesh Kumar also from the same state make it to the Indian team. But just to put Akashdeep's performance into perspective, it's not that common in the last decade or so for Indian fast bowlers to get their debut on home soil. Only Shardul Thakur has done that, and his debut test only lasted a couple of overs. So well done, Akashdeep. A good first day in Test
Yeah.
cricket for him. Let's talk about the rest of the Indian bowling, Sanjay. However, the pitch played after the first session for the rest of the day, India spinners, the kind of purchase we saw them getting, that seemed to decrease through the second and third sessions. How do you think the Indian spinners fared? And also, what were your thoughts on Kuldeep Yadav only bowling 10 overs through the entire day, a couple of which only came right at the end of it?
The pitch obviously eased up a little bit in the sense the moisture completely disappeared. The 40 minutes lunch break is a very important period on day one because it's a lot of time. 40 minutes, the pitch is exposed to the sun, and it's pretty, hot sun around 11:30 to 12. So that dried up the moisture. Plus, Joe Root and Ben Foakes decided to put their head down, not take any risks, and the pitch didn't have too many demons in it. The odd ball certainly turned. But when you have two spinners bowling 50 overs together, and at that stage, Kuldeep Yadav just bowling seven, showed one thing about Rohit Sharma, which I found hard to understand because he seemed to completely invest in his perception of the bowlers, as in he felt obviously that Ashwin and Jadeja are more likely to get a wicket. In the end, didn't have much to show for the toil that they went through. So sometimes as captain, you just got to also respect the sport in the sense that your perception could maybe sometimes not deliver what you're expecting. You've got a third spinner in the side who's in good form, and especially when Ollie Robinson had come in, I thought Kuldeep Yadav would come into the attack a lot quicker. So that was a little hard to understand, but we're getting an insight into Rohit Sharma as to how he thinks Kuldeep Yadav should certainly have bowled more.
Right, so 302 for 7 is where England finished on day one, Sanjay. I know we have decided not to go into any kind of calling what may happen, but based on what you saw of this pitch on day one, how can we expect the pitch to play over the next few days?
So one of the tremendous advantages that you have as an analyst or somebody who has to give the opinion on the game is to actually go there and have a look at the pitch. And the Indians and the officials are very kind. They allow us to feel the pitch and stuff. In England, you're not even allowed to be close to the pitch. So the pitch report has to be like, okay, that area and stuff. So when I felt the pitch, despite the cracks, there was that dark coloring which suggested moisture. It was pretty hard. Very hard. In fact, near the cracks as well, when I pressed down on it, it didn't move at all, which would, suggest that it looked quite, it didn't look pristine or clean or hygienic. It looked very patchy. But because of the hardness, it was bound to play better than it looked. And that is the reputation Ranji pitch has. So yes, the pitch is a lot better than we thought. And bearing that in mind, I expect India to also get a good score. So that's why I felt that if England had to really put India under pressure, they needed a bigger partnership than the one Ben Foakes.
Right. That makes it feel like day two is likely to be a rather important day in the context of this game and this series. Will India make a big score? But before that, how much can India stop England on? Let's see how it pans out. We look forward to your company after day two, Sanjay. Thank you for your time.